This is Christy Bridges, and I have a guest today that is for you men. And ladies, if you're listening, this book is for your guys, but you might read it too. I met Mark Delaney a few months ago. Mark is what I would call a dream breather. He gathers people together, small groups, to share their dreams and encourage one another and pray for one another and maybe even help one another out. He's that kind of guy, and I love people who build community. I'm really blessed, actually, to be kind of in the middle of watching communities grow all around me. And it's exciting. It's exciting in a world where people say, oh, everybody's getting disconnected, to see that that's not always true. Mm-hmm. So Mark has gathered 30 men to share their stories. And they've put out this book that I think can help you guys get unstuck wherever you are, to be encouraged that you're not alone, and to move forward in purpose. Mark, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm glad to jump into the conversation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about this book and I guess how it all came together.
Yeah, well, the book is called In the Game, and me and 36 of my friends decided we should do something to help men. Not that we're better than men, we're just one of them. And we just, I had an idea of some content I wanted to create. And, I believe that much of life is just taking next steps with people in your life. And so the people in my life, I just felt there was next steps for us to take. And the idea of this book just went from one thought to the next. And eventually it was like, let's just do this. And so I came up with 5 questions that I asked each one of these men to honestly answer about their life. And we just did it. I felt like I was pregnant for a year, actually a year and a half long pregnancy of this thing. And finally last week it birthed, and it's exciting. It's a metaphor about sports. But really it's about what happens to a man's life and how he can understand his life and get back into the game.
Nice. So now, just as an observer, right? I've been married twice and I have a lot of guy friends. And as an observer, that's not actually a man, one of the things that I've seen happen to guys is they get kind of stuck in this solitary, I would say comfortable or maybe even boring existence where, you get up, you go to work, you come home, maybe you have somebody at home, but your world gets kind of small as you adult, as you move from the really fun teenage and 20s into the mundane adulthood. And did you find yourself ever doing that? Or did any of these guys have that kind of experience?
Yeah, I think I'll say it like this. I think a lot of boys grow up playing sports.
Yeah.
And there's an entire system set up to help boys play their sport. Even my 2.5-year-old grandson, out my window, I can see a sandbox that we prepared for him. So when he comes to our house, he has his game and he knows it. He can bolt out the back door and there's scooper trucks and digger trucks in the sand and he can play. We help him with his game. Jace, like other little boys, when they're 5, 6, and 7, we start putting them onto teams.
Yeah.
And what we help the young boy experience is an adventure. That game is an adventure. And with that adventure, you have teammates that you get to, charge into battle with. And you also have coaches and mentors that help you understand what you're doing. And there's an entire system. Like if a young boy plays sports his whole life, and even as a teenager, even into college, literally hundreds or thousands of people have helped him get into an arena, literally, and perform. He gets to be the gladiator. He gets to be the guy in the uniform. He's cheered. He's encouraged. He's given awards. But when his sport comes to an end, now the game is over.
Yeah.
The teammates are gone and the coaches and mentors are gone. And now he's in this whole new phase of life where there doesn't seem to be a game anymore. And you spoke of a man being bored, um, just isolated, like the man, he doesn't know what to do with his life. I spoke with a man, he was about 45. He was about to go to the major leagues. He was a very high-end prospect for the major leagues. People would have thought he was going to make it. He made it as high as AA for the Red Sox, which is pretty close to being in the bigs. But he had an injury, and they ended his career. So I'm sitting across the table from him, and he's probably like 43, 44. And ever since baseball ended at about age 25, his life has been a train wreck. Everything about it, his relationships with his kids, his multiple marriages, it's just been an absolute train wreck. I looked at him and I said, how many hours did you spend in your life where you were being helped to play baseball well? You were being coached, mentored, people videoed you and helped critique what you did. There were hundreds of people and thousands of hours invested into you with baseball.
Yeah.
But everything other than baseball, how much time has been spent helping you know how to understand your life, understand who you are, understand how to be a husband? Like probably 0 hours were spent in conversation on how to be a husband. Probably 0 hours were spent on helping him how to understand being a father. So why is his life a train wreck? Well, quite frankly, baseball would have been a disaster if he hadn't had help. But with baseball, he had hundreds of people over the course of his career that helped guide him to succeed at baseball. But as an adult, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So the man gets in this place where he has no clue what he's doing. And he fakes his way through it. He doesn't know how to even describe what's wrong. He doesn't know what's wrong. He just feels like a failure. And as soon as a man feels like a failure, he's in big trouble.
Yeah.
A man doesn't have to fail. He only has to feel like a failure. The moment he feels like a failure, he doesn't know where to go from there.
Right.
And that's a good reason to drink, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's a good reason to do a lot of things that give us that little bit of admiration, that little bit of
some kind of good feeling.
Yeah, some kind of good feeling. And you're right, because when we're on a team, if you think about it, especially if you start young, right? You've got this grandkid that goes out in the sandbox where all the fun stuff is. As he progresses into team playing, he's going to be cheered on whenever he manages to hit the ball or catch the ball. And then as his skills develop, he'll learn how to take critique, how to examine what he's done and get better at it. We don't really have that in other places. When a man goes into family life, maybe in job life, right? A lot of people get that 90-day raise, right?
Yeah.
You start your job, you show up every day for 90 days, and then you get a raise, right? So you get a little encouragement. But family life, you marry someone with completely different life experience than you, who expects things you may or may not even know about. And that first few years of marriage is a very emotional time for both of you. And so here you have this person who can easily and quickly and repeatedly make you feel like you can't do anything right.
Yeah.
And then if you have a kid, they cry whenever they feel like it, right? I mean, just like they come out crying and then they keep crying and then they fight back constantly. And you're used to a kind of teamwork, a kind of coaching, a kind of direction,
some kind of encouragement.
So I can see that is hard.
Yeah, if anyone, not just a man, but anyone, you get to a place in life and you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And it feels like everything is failure.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture where people don't get a lot of encouragement. Nobody does. But we
Yeah.
do tend to find relationships and even in the workplace sometimes or the home where the criticism's always ready. If
Yes.
we're not careful, we're around people that they never think about encouraging you, but they'll always criticize you.
Mhm.
And boy, uh, that's a train wreck waiting to happen right there.
Yeah.
When you're only criticized. I recall working a job for a long time, and as a teacher, I was just on a 1 year contract. That's how most education is, and it was at this school. And I never really knew. I never really knew if they wanted me
Oh,
until April hit, and they would call me to the office to sign a contract for the next year. And that was my indicator.
wow.
Well, I guess they like me. I guess they
It
like
takes a
me.
lot of stamina to keep giving your best when you're like, I don't know if this is doing any good. Man. And
Yeah.
I think about it, there's a thing that happens between about 14 and 28 or so, where men start, they're ready to launch, they start pushing away from the close family relationships because something in them is stirring to be independent,
Mhm.
right? And um, I've noticed, and hopefully this isn't this way everywhere, but just noticed that there's a lot of conflict between guys and their dads, guys and their moms. I mean, the actions guys are taking are scaring their moms trying to control
Mhm.
that, right? And dads just seem to get into this dominance game, with the guy. And so they go through a time where um I would feel like that would be hard if you're going out into life and you're pushing away from the people who've always supported you in
Mhm.
order to do that. Um,
And you're looking for some kind of people to be around. Number one, that you like being around, and number two, they fully support you.
yeah.
It feels like it's very easy, even if you don't want it to be the case. It's very easy for parents to come across in ways that they're trying to control their 18-year-old or 19-year-old kid, or you know when men are struggling, it
Mhm.
always shows up outwardly and obviously. When a man's struggling, like he's angry, or he's throwing stuff, or he's drinking too much, or he's gambling, or he's on drugs, or he's trying to try to stand up on his motorcycle driving down the street. Like men, when we struggle,
It
it's
shows up to
big.
everybody but the guy. It's going
Clearly,
right.
it men struggle in big and obvious ways, and it
Yeah,
kind of forces everyone to go like, "Hey, Johnny, you probably shouldn't drink that much in one setting." And as soon as you do that, of course, the men, we tend to be defensive, like, don't don't look at me that way. Don't look at me as a men don't like being judged. and
right.
and so it's really hard as a parent, or if you're a wife and you see your husband struggling with something like gambling that could ruin your family, or struggling with drinking that could ruin everything, so on and so forth. It's hard to not say, Johnny, you should probably not ruin our family with gambling.
You're right.
It's really hard to not do that, but yet that's not really the problem. And
No, the problem is there's something going on in here.
yeah, here's the thing. I look at it this way, and this is why the book is called In the Game,
Yeah.
because when a man is on the sidelines, he is going to misbehave. A man will never wake up and be well motivated to behave.
Right.
If you look at a man and you tell him to behave, it's of course behaving is a good thing. But if a man feels like behaving is the only thing he has to live for, he's going to check out.
Yeah, I would
He,
imagine.
he can't. He just can't do it. A man needs to live bigger. So there's chapters in the book about this where when a man gets on the sidelines, he doesn't really have anything to live for. And so his problems are what I would call sideline problems. He might be trying to fix his behavior. He might be trying to look better in the eyes of people. People look at the guy on the sidelines and they're trying to, you might look down on the man on the sidelines. The man on the sidelines is thinking about himself and his problems.
Yeah.
The man who gets into the game has a very different set of problems. In the game means you have a mission you're pursuing.
Yeah.
When a man is living on mission, he'll behave better. But it's not because he's trying to behave. It's because he's too busy chasing something. I remember talking to two men some of us men meet at breakfast at a Denny's at a truck stop. It's beautiful. It's in the game for
I
us.
love it.
And one guy talked about how he played basketball. He was very good at basketball in high school. Another guy talked about, we were joking about being on the sidelines. And a guy said, on the sidelines, you just end up just watching the cheerleaders. Well, the guy that played basketball, and he was a star in high school, he said, they have cheerleaders in basketball? He was
That's where you want your man to be, in the game.
Oh, yes. Over the years, he was
How
he was the
funny.
star. He was in the game. He's got the sword in his hand, metaphorically. He doesn't have time to be gazing at cheerleaders because he's playing the game.
Makes sense.
But if a man's not in the game, well, how does he not notice the cheerleaders? He doesn't have anything else that captivates him. If a man has nothing that captivates his heart and gives him a pursuit in life, he is absolutely going to misbehave.
Yeah.
And it's because of boredom.
Something to move towards.
Yeah.
A lot of women, when we think something captivates our heart, a lot of us are like, oh, I'm just going to bask in this thing, right? And that's not a guy thing. Guys need to be moving towards something. So I'm thinking about what we were just talking about. You've got the young guy who pushes away, needs some community, needs that continued support as he pursues other things in life, right? The next things in life. Is it possible to take a look at your own life when you're advancing, right? You're let's say I'm 18 and I know, okay, theoretically I graduated high school, I'm supposed to go to college and supposed to do the, whatever, but that can feel like a very long game.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get distracted easily and derailed off of that easily because that's kind of like just keep behaving and then keep behaving a little longer and then keep behaving a little longer, right?
Someday, hopefully it's going to pay off. Yeah.
Right. And so that's when you find, those college romances and we get married to someone who probably isn't right for us. Neither of us are trained for this because it was a pursuit.
Yeah.
That, whatever. So is there a way to set yourself up for success there? Not that, young marriage is bad, but is there a way to maybe set yourself up for success so that you're not just getting derailed, but you're not starting to feel like you're always plotting?
I taught almost 20 years in school.
Yeah.
And the subjects I taught was always along the lines of life skills or Bible class, which was the only classes I could teach because there's no way I would have been excited to teach diagramming sentences or algebraic equations.
Oh gosh.
So
yeah.
My focus every day got to be, how do you really help humans?
Yes.
Because there's not this set curriculum that I have to plow through for an ACT test. I get to look at these human beings and be like, what do they actually need to be able to be prepared to thrive as an adult. And that was the constant push. There's this one thing that I have found about people. Because one thing I learned about teaching is 14-year-olds are not different than the common adult, nor is the common adult very different than a 14-year-old. The core of what's inside of a human, the wrestlings that we have, we all pitch a fit down the cereal aisle when we can't buy the stuff we want to buy. The 14-year-old gets upset because the parents won't buy the Lucky Charms. And then when we're 40, we're upset at ourselves because we either buy them or we're mad that we don't buy them. And well, the human wrestlings of the heart are just so common.
So true.
And what I've found is there's this thing about people that's so helpful. And that is when people know their purpose.
Yeah.
Without knowing our purpose, I feel like the default setting of a human being is to wake up and think about our problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then because we feel like we can't fix them, we just look for some kind of comfort to at least numb what our life has become. So I've got problems and I have numbing devices, and that's about it. And neither one of them are very compelling. We're not happy with our numbing devices, but we just have to have them. We need that pacifier, whether it's alcohol or Twinkies or gambling, whatever it is. When life is numb and boring and all we have is problems, how do you have any kind of fulfillment out of that?
Gotcha.
And so one thing that, and we do this now, part of the work that we do is we help people know their purpose, because it's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because when there's a purpose outside of you, it really helps a person deal with the wrestlings inside of themselves. But if there's no purpose outside of me that compels me, then I'm left to look in the mirror every day and think about what's wrong with me. And that's miserable for any human being.
And the more numbing devices we pursue, the worse we feel about ourselves. That's why when you start giving yourself chemicals, right? Your alcohol, your drugs, whatever kind of chemicals to pacify that part of you that desperately wants something real to do, right? You end up more suicidal because you really hate the continuous chasing of nothing. So
hang on a second. Hang on. Listen to what you just said.
Yeah.
It's profound. We hate the continual cycle of chasing nothing.
Yes.
Think about that. This is the kind of conversation I think all of us humans need to have. Because here's the mistake that we make, Christy, is we point the finger at people for what they're choosing to numb their misery with. And we tell them, stop shopping, stop gambling, stop drinking, stop whatever they're doing.
Right.
Well, what do I do with this frustration of the constant chasing of nothing?
Right.
Like you can't just be miserable and be like, well, do you have some good water? Like no one does that. I'm miserable. Can I have some celery and water? I'm
gonna drop and do 20 push-ups. Maybe that'll make it better. No, I need to. Yeah.
People need help with dealing with the cycle of nothingness about our existence. Our life is made for meaning. I was at Sam's Club one time and I ended up having a conversation with a cherry pie. I was there. You talk to food. Talking to food's very therapeutic.
I get it.
Eating food, not so much. So I was there to get some rotisserie chicken, and they were out, and it was like 5 minutes of a wait. And so I'm like, I'll wait for the rotisserie chicken. Well, I turn around, and there's the devil's playground called the bakery items. Right. And there's these massive pies for like $9. It's like the cheapest drug on the planet.
Oh, yeah. And it should feed the whole neighborhood, but no, it's breakfast for a week, right?
No. Hey, if your life is frustrating and empty, you're going to need pie.
I get it.
And I sat there and I was like, And I used to really struggle with food, and I'm still not skinny, but I'm free now. Food doesn't dominate my life. But what I found is that the reason food dominated my life is because I had nothing greater to pursue with my life. The emptiness of life must be filled.
Yes.
And we're going to fill it with some fake thing like drugs or shopping or pie, or we'll find what real purpose looks like in our existence. But I looked at that pie and I was like, if someone had nothing to live for, it makes 1,000% sense to go to
Well,
Sam's
yeah,
Club
because
every
it'll
day.
knock them out, and then they just
Or
have to wake up
it's
and do
$9.
more of it.
It's
Right.
$9.
Yeah.
It's $9. It looks beautiful. It tastes beautiful. It's in a simple package you can carry. Like, why wouldn't you eat one of those every day?
Right.
Like, it's a simple, quick fix to a horrible problem, it seems. Of course, it's not.
No.
But what I find, and this is kind of maybe the real heart behind the book, is when a man feels like he's on the sidelines, he is stuck in that place where it's like, why do I even exist? What deep down in his heart, this is how I felt as a man. I felt like there was a 1-inch tall lion just laying at the bottom of my heart, waiting for some reason to roar. Any reason to roar. And he's just laying down there. And so there's many good men that are like that.
Yeah.
It's like they want to have a sword in their hand, but all they have is alcohol in their hand or some kind of substance.
Or remote control. Yeah.
But the remote control. But because they haven't found a way of holding a sword, they're left to go to some other substance to put in their hand.
Yeah.
And then here's I think the awful dead end that many men arrive at.
Yeah.
They, along with people around them, think that the problem is the substance they're abusing, instead of realizing the problem is the lack of substance in his life. And until a person lives a life of substance, many people will end up chasing substances.
Yeah.
And then you're in this horrible cycle where your life is empty and you hate yourself for doing drugs. So my life is empty and I hate that. I do drugs and I hate that. And my friends hate that I do drugs. My family hates that I do drugs. And it's this horrible stew.
Right. Okay. So
Where's the way
it's not the
forward?
substance, it's the lack of substance. So
It's,
let's say I've made it through decades of numbing. My life is sitting with a remote control or sitting with a joint or sitting with the gaming thing, right? My relationships suck because I don't have any energy to put into them.
Yeah.
Because I've developed such a pattern of numbing. How do I break out of that? How do I actually, I know, looking at this, it requires community and it requires purpose. But if I feel like nothing inspires me, and I don't like anybody, where do I go? How do I change that story?
Without a doubt, it involves people.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. Basically, the coping devices we choose give us a way of surviving other than turning to people. Frankly, other than turning to God.
And people are difficult. It takes work to get to know people.
Well,
right?
And here's the reality. How many people at some point in their life were broken down?
Yeah.
And they turned to someone and they got burnt by them.
Oh, like you can't get through middle school without that happening.
Yeah. And the pain of that,
right?
The pain of that will cause a person to be like, well, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
So if your life gets to this really empty place and you're isolated and you're like, well, my life's horrible enough. I'm not going to now open my heart for some human being to trample on it. I have very little left. I wrote a book about this called One Step to Freedom that talks about this dilemma of the thing that we most need to do, we're terrified to do. When we're stuck in our problems and it feels like the only thing you can do is hide them till you die, it feels like there's no choice.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you can't fix yourself, and you're probably right. You can't fix yourself. You feel like people can't help you. People can't fix you. And you're right. People can't fix you. But people can play a role
Yes.
in redemption.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. People can play a role in redemption. I think all of us are living the prodigal son's journey. We are somewhere on that journey. Maybe the 18-year-old young man is telling his dad, I'm sick of you. Mom, your rules, you guys are stifling. I'm out of here. And he leaves the house to go do his thing, and he wants to live his life, and he wants to chase everything he wants to chase, and he burns through his money and he burns through relationships. And at some point he ends up in a pig pen because he's done nothing but ruin his life. He wanted the best life, and all he did is create the worst life. And there he is in a pig pen. And life it's slop. It's pigs and it's slop. And he's so hungry that he's contemplating eating the pig food. And this world has a lot of good pig food.
Yeah.
If you get in a pig pen in life, there's a lot of things you can do to numb yourself. And I think the big question that everyone comes to in that pig pen of life, when you look at yourself and you're like, what have I done?
Yeah.
How did I become what I am? How did I get here? I think there's three choices. One is you go back to the city. The first time you went to the city, you gambled your money away. Now you can go back to the city and maybe sweep the floor at the casino. And that's not going to work, but well, you can at least make enough money to feed yourself.
Right.
The second option that a lot of people choose is that pig pen they're in, they dress it up to make it look reasonable. Because at least if my neighbors and friends think that I'm doing okay, that'll be okay. And so we plant bushes around the pig pen.
Right.
And try to make people at least think we're doing well. I'll hide my problems and I'll put up some pretty bushes around this pig pen. And that's an easy thing to do. But there's a third option, and I think it leads to freedom.
Yeah.
And that is when a person goes home. Not necessarily home as meaning your family, but going home meaning you go back to the world and you go there with nothing but your failure, and you say, this is who I am. This is who I really am. This is what I did. This is who I am. I can't hide. I can't fix myself. I don't know what to do, but I can't keep living the way I'm living. I'm just showing up to say I'm here and I don't know what to do. And I'm sorry. Here I am.
And I'm willing to start with something. And you know, and that's a story that God is at the center of. And then, you know, everything I do on One Moment Wiser is I love connecting people with each other and with God. And that is a story where, you know, God, the Father, is going, come, we can do this together. Yeah. We can do this together. Come on in. Let's get you dressed and cleaned up. Let's get you fed. Let's get you started being part of a functioning family, right? Yeah. And you know, that prodigal son in that story, he didn't have, you know, not everybody was going to be real easy to get along with when he got home. His big brother was like kind of mad, right? He had to deal with some conflict, some reconciliation, probably some, you know, I, just knowing how people are, right? There
Yeah.
was probably a little bit of tension as they learned to work together, as they learned to live each other and take responsibility and work towards purpose
Yeah.
together. It takes that, but there's a personal responsibility. You can't fix yourself, but you have to show up for your part.
Yeah.
Other people can't fix you, but they can certainly
But they're
help
part of it.
refine you, right? And help you have that sense of belonging that's part of Maslow's
Yep.
hierarchy of need. We need to eat, we need to be protected, and we need a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And so, together we discover purpose, and maybe there's small purposes and there's big purposes, right?
Yeah.
But we find that in unity, in
Yeah.
cooperation.
Yeah. It's so hard. That one step to freedom of going home and just being honest with people about who you are is it is a preposterous thing to do for anybody. I don't care what your problem is. It's interesting, the number of people we talk to, everyone thinks that their problem is the most ugly problem ever. Everyone does. Doesn't matter what it is. And to go home and to admit it to people is preposterous to our human nature. And in that parable, there's the beautiful part where we see the father runs to that person, that prodigal, and meets him with restoration. He doesn't meet him and say, "Where did the money go?" He doesn't
Right?
meet him and say, "Why do you look so pathetic? Why are you so messed up?" He doesn't do that. He restores him. He puts the robe around his neck, the ring on his finger, the sandals on his feet. He restores him. And this is oftentimes I think people certainly fear, if I go home and tell people I've lost everything and I've messed up everything,
Yeah.
I think we fear that people, number one, will judge us. And number two, they're going to tell us to fix our problems or fix our past.
Yeah.
And nobody can do that.
No, you can't do that.
You can't do it.
We
But-
might have to earn some trust
But
as
what
we
people,
begin to make good decisions. We might
Yeah.
have to earn some trust.
what people can do is begin to pursue the person they were made to be. They can pursue their purpose.
Yes.
And as you pursue your purpose, it's amazing. There needs to be moments of clarity about our past. There needs to be moments of honesty about, I do struggle with alcohol or whatever it is. Those conversations need to happen, but they need to happen on the pathway of purpose. Oftentimes people get themselves trapped in this place where it's like, okay, the prodigal son comes home. And basically what people tend to do is we put them on probation and we say, okay, once you're fixed, once you've earned the money back, once you don't have that problem anymore, then we'll talk about restoring you.
Right.
And I think in our humanity, like we fear, like, isn't this going to help people change? I just listened to a podcast the other day, a young man that I talked to 5 years ago. He was 15 years old and his life was messed up. And he was telling the story of the first time that him and I met. His parents asked me to meet with him. And I gave him the Purpose Mastermind booklet.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll never forget what it said on the inside of it. Him and I, when we met, we never talked about his problems. We just had one conversation. And then I handed him this guidebook for the mastermind. And I said, if you want to do this, we'll do this. And it's 8 weeks of a weekly conversation. But he said, I'll never forget what you wrote on the inside of it. And what I wrote to him was, you're a bright light in a dark world. And he said, that made no sense to me, because in that moment of my life, I felt like I was such a dark, messed up person. Oftentimes when we go to help people, we think we need to clean them up first. And what I find is that God wants to use us to be that prodigal son's father to people.
Yeah.
that we have the faith to look at a broken human being and look beyond their mess and look at them and say, you're made to be a bright light in a dark world.
Yes.
We need to have the faith and courage to look beyond people's past and see who they're made to be and point them towards it and call them towards it. Is what I find that when you ask people not about their problem, but ask them about their purpose, they get very interested and they start squaring their shoulders a little bit. Because when people are broken down and they've been eating slop of this world for years, they're really not very interested in us saying, you know, you've been eating that slop for a long time. Maybe I can help you stop. Well, they want to punch you in the face.
Because they've probably already tried that.
They've tried every day, and they've tried many people. But what if we instead go to them and instead of saying, how long have you been drinking? What if we ask them instead, who were you made to be? And how about we talk about that for 8 weeks?
Yeah.
And how about every week we take steps toward your calling instead of steps against your problem? Men and all people need something great to live for, not just something bad to live against.
It works much better. I think about
it works much better.
Beautiful people who showed up in my life, and just this year, just in January, I had had kind of a dark winter, and I'd been shifting gears and just, you know, kind of waiting for God to show me next, and I didn't expect anything really at that point, just because of some emotions I was going through. Well, January, I happened to visit with a friend, and we weren't talking about all the junk I was going through. We were just talking about her life. And she goes, hey, have you thought about hosting this mental health conference, hosting a mental health conference? And I was like, no, but I really like that idea. By the time I left her house, I was already thinking of all the things. And within a week, it was like all I could think of. I had this whole outline, and within a couple of weeks, I had all the people. And that's going to happen October 31st and November 1st. Tickets will be on sale soon. But it was like this huge shift. All of a sudden, I went from draggy and dark and just wanting to lie down and, you know, give up, to purpose, to something that excited me and made me excited about what I could do for other people.
Yeah.
And so we need people in our life to do that, just that, to go, let's talk about your purpose and let's take some steps there. Oh, beautiful. I love it. You are so, so right.
That is a beautiful story. There's a number of stories in the book that are similar to that. I think of one of them, a friend named Kyle. He talked about being 43 years old, and he was an alcoholic. And I won't say it as well as he wrote it in the book, but he talks about the change that took place. And he's not an alcoholic anymore. He said, I didn't try to stop drinking. Yeah. He said, I didn't try to stop drinking. And he said, I started to show up and serve and love people everywhere I went. Yeah. He specifically went and bought some equipment to be able to change people's tires. Just like a couple different jacks and a couple different sizes of lug nuts or whatever they're called. Because he said, you know what, wherever I go, if I see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire, I can change their flat tire. He began to live like that. He began to live like that, and it changed him. And he said boldly in the book, he didn't try to stop drinking. Instead, he just pursued loving people. And it's powerful. There's a number of stories like that in this book. There's one by a man named Russell where he went on this missions trip. And in the book, there's this picture of this little boy in a country, in a poor country. And this one look that he saw from this little boy changed him. And Russell realized that he had spent so much time in his life thinking about himself. And when he got over thinking about himself, instead just start serving people and showing up for people, chasing purpose.
Yeah.
It's for anybody, it's a miserable existence to be on the sidelines trying to keep our uniform clean. Instead of being in the game.
Right.
Pursuing something with people that's bigger than us.
Right.
And that's what excites me every day. Because I can't help someone stop an addiction, but I can help someone, and we can all help people to start living.
Yes.
Because that's the bigger problem. If you're on the side, if a man, I'll just speak for men, if a man is on the sidelines, he's going to have problems. But the only problem is actually that he's on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So forget the behavior on the sidelines, get him to cross the line and get into a game with people where he's pursuing a sense of mission with people. And it's amazing how his behavior and life will change the more that he lives in the game. And that's something all people can do. All of us can.
So I just want to say, for all of you ladies listening out there, your guy needs purpose. He needs to be able to discover his purpose and live on his purpose. And he's not necessarily going to live the purpose you put out there for him. So make sure that you let him develop that. And it's going to look different and might even make you nervous. Right? But it's going to be worth it. You will love what happens as he grows into that. And Mark, where do we get this?
Yeah, this is on Amazon, In the Game.
Yeah.
This book can help men understand their life.
Hold it up a little more.
Yeah, In the Game.
In the Game. And read that. What is it? It's In the Game, and it has a bunch of stuff too.
It's a playbook for overcoming setbacks, rebuilding confidence, and living with purpose.
Overcoming setbacks, rebuilding confidence,
and living with
purpose. You know what? I might just read it for myself too.
I think, yeah,
and they can get that on Amazon. They can also visit your website, right?
Website, yeah, but ultimately it's purchasing through Amazon, yeah.
That's all right, because your website is worth visiting, markdelaney.com. I was looking at your courses earlier. You've got Restoring Intimacy in Your Marriage, How to Be the Hero During Conflict, The Gauntlet, 10 Questions for Couples in Love, The Confident Father. Whoo, man, The Confident Father. I think fatherhood is intimidating. And when you think you got it right, your kids do stuff that makes you go, am I doing this right? So that's wonderful. So markdelaney.com, and you can also get this book on Amazon. Hey, Mark, I didn't ask you this beforehand, but would you say a prayer?
Sure.
For our guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate
that. Lord, I pray for any man out there that finds himself at a place in life where he finds himself beating his head against a wall, frustrated over the things that he does. Lord, I pray that you would stir his heart with the whisper of calling. I pray that there would be people that would come across his path that wouldn't judge him for his wrongdoing, but instead would talk to him about who he was made to be. I pray for that man who's been trying to fix himself for years. Lord, I pray that you would send people along his path that he might find himself, and they might find a sense of calling and find brotherhood, people that would help him live with that sword in his hand. I thank you that no weapon formed against us can prosper. And so I pray for that man who's done fighting himself. I pray that he would surrender and open up his eyes and heart to hear from God and to pick up calling and to chase it with all his heart. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank
God
you.
bless you and the work you do. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Oh, that was wonderful.